So recently I did I made a life-size or to scale quilt of the Doctor Who TARDIS police box thing. That was really awesome because it was a little bit geeky and it satisfied my math things because I had to go like do research on how big these things are, and I had to make sure that I could physically walk through it if I needed to, and all that kind of stuff. But on the flip side, one of the patterns I designed, which is called I've named it Gabriella, is like a sweet little pinwheel quilt, and I can make those all day long, and I have made like 10 or 11 of them, and it's just this sweet little baby quilt, pinwheels with a little name appliqued on it, and every time I finish one of those, do the last little hand stitching on it, I'm very pleased with myself because it turned out a lot cuter than I thought it was going to be. So I kind of live a double life. I manage a quilt store, and that's my like 9 to 5-ish job. But on the side, I am a quilt designer, and I started this company called Dreams of Sewing Machines, and it's basically combining my love of quilting and my graphic design, and I actually will sew a pattern and design it and then actually put it onto paper and sell that to quilt stores. Tying quilting and kind of queerness together for a really long time didn't mesh for me. Like, I feel like for a long time I had two separate identities. I had my queerness over here and my quiltiness over here, and people either saw me as queer and saw me as quilting and really didn't kind of mesh the two together. For a while, I really wanted to force my queerness and my quilting together, and so I would try to do that by like making rainbow quilts and making doing things on purpose to like make sure that if one of my friends was having a baby, I gave them something that was very gender neutral. And I struggled with that because that's really kind of outside what I personally wanted to make.
And would that be like a baby quilt or just like a sample?
So I have this quilt project that I'm working on called the Alphabet Quilt Project. The quilts that I make that are more sellable, people look at them and they don't necessarily think that I made them, because this does not match that. A lot of the times I feel like I have to let my quilts speak for myself rather than my personality or my person, because I think, unfortunately, there are some people out there that would probably see me first and not look second at my work because of who I am. There are several kind of gay male quilters who have to kind of keep that identity so hidden, and I'm kind of done with that. I'm really trying to embrace my identity in spite of my job. Young women have brought in their children sometimes into the store, the retail store where I work, and their children ask if I'm a boy or a girl. It always kind of made me smile because I was always just like, well, what do you think? And they would take a minute and they would figure it out. They would say, okay, well, you're wearing a skirt. And it's like, okay, well, does that necessarily make me feminine? I think to your eyes, yes, probably. But it's interesting that you had to ask that even if I was wearing a skirt, because that means that I did something to at least challenge that kind of visualness. I may or may not own 4 or 5 different sewing machines at any given point. Right now, I'm working on my my workhorse, which is my Bernina Artista 630, which is highly computerized, does a little bit of everything, embroidery, decorative stitches, all that kind of stuff. So like if I make the quilt for somebody, that's the name that it gets. So like this is Juliet's quilt, and we call her Juju, and then like that's Gabriella's quilt, and I'm not very creative with the names. Martini, because it looks like olives.
Yeah, it totally does.
For a long time, I really struggled with both worlds, both kind of the queer world and the traditional quilting world, because the reception that I was getting from the queer world was, your work is amazing, but you're not really doing anything to further the queer community. You're not making the rainbow quilts. You're not doing the outrageous kind of statement quilts. And then the traditional world was seeing my work and saying, oh, your work is so beautiful, but why are you so queer? And that, I struggled with that for so long because I really wanted to break into this world, but I wanted people to stop making judgments. And so for a while, I began to like forget my whole identity as a queer person just to kind of find my identity as a quilter. And yeah, my love of quilting was diminished because I wasn't being true to who I was. You know, I used to try to be more masculine than I was. And then, you know, I tried to do kind of all the like stereotypical butch things. And then as I kind of get more and more into the quilting world, it's like, no, I love being a girl sometimes, you know, like I like to cook, and I wouldn't mind kind of being barefoot and pregnant. Like, that would be fine. But then just don't take away kind of my male aspects as well. Like, you know, I like to build things. Yeah, it's interesting because I kind of do it all, and sometimes I think I don't really think about kind of the day-to-day queerness. I just kind of like, meh, this is who I'm gonna do today, or who I'm gonna be today, and I'm fine with that.